I still remember the moment vividly. One early morning when the silence of our suburban home was shattered by a single, life-altering revelation. I had been making coffee when I noticed an envelope on the kitchen counter, its handwriting as delicate as it was deliberate. Inside was a note, not from me, but from my wife, Lena. The words leapt off the paper. I need you to help her, to give her the gift of a child. Please, for my sister. In that moment, my mind whirled with disbelief, shock, and a dawning horror. Little did I know that this single request would send me spiraling into a labyrinth of betrayal, love, and responsibility. A journey where every choice would haunt me, and every heartbeat would echo with regret and longing. The first crack in the foundation. That morning, as I sat with the note in hand, my thoughts clashed violently. Lena's voice rang in my ears, a mix of determination and an undercurrent of desperate vulnerability. My heart pounded, and for a long time, I couldn't bring myself to speak, to move, or even to think clearly. I tried to recall any hint of this request in our past conversations, but nothing ever suggested something so radical. Lena had always been the steady anchor of our marriage, yet now, it seemed, a hidden current was pulling us both into dangerous, uncharted waters. I found myself questioning everything. Had I truly known her at all? Was our marriage built on fragile facades that now threatened to crumble under the weight of her secret? I felt betrayed, not by a lover's betrayal, but by the woman I loved, whose mysterious inner world had remained hidden even after years of marriage. Days later, Lena finally broached the subject face to face. We sat together on the back porch in the fading light of dusk, the cool air doing little to temper the heat of our emotions. "Why now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you ask me to do something like this?" Lena's eyes glistened as she searched mine for understanding. "It's my sister, Mara. You know her. She's always been the one who's suffered silently. After all these years, I can't bear to see her longing for something that she might never have. And I trust you. I trust you more than anyone. You're the only one who can help us right now." Her words, gentle yet insistent, stirred a maelstrom of conflicting feelings. I had always prided myself on being a supportive husband, but this request struck at the very core of what I thought was morally acceptable. The idea of helping Mara, Lena's fragile yet fiercely determined sister, to have a child, especially by being the one to provide that child, felt like stepping into a role I'd never imagined. Yet, beneath the shock was a tender, almost unspoken empathy for Mara's pain. The unspoken history. Before that fateful night, I had known little about Mara beyond the polite smiles at family gatherings and half-forgotten anecdotes of her struggles with fertility. She was soft-spoken, fragile, and always in the shadow of Lena's vibrant confidence. It wasn't until Lena's confession that I began piecing together the hidden sorrow in Mara's eyes, the silent tears, the unvoiced yearning for motherhood. Lena had kept these details locked away, perhaps thinking that protecting her sister meant never sharing the painful truth with anyone else. In her plea, I sensed not only the desperation of a sister's love, but also the burden of a secret that had long festered beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect lives. That night, I lay awake in our bed, replaying Lena's words over and over. I thought of our vows, of the trust we had built over years of shared dreams and silent compromises. And yet, a quiet voice inside urged me to consider the possibility that perhaps our marriage was not as perfect as I had always believed. I found myself wondering if the past was filled with hidden sorrows we'd both ignored, if Lena's own pain had somehow merged with her love for Mara. The internal struggle. For days, I drifted in a haze of indecision. Every conversation with Lena was laden with unspoken tension, each smile hiding a myriad of questions. My mind became a battleground where guilt and desire clashed. On one hand, I felt the weight of betrayal of the sanctity of our marriage and the implicit trust that had once defined it. On the other hand, I couldn't ignore the profound sense of responsibility to help Mara, who had suffered in silence for too long. Late one night, I found myself pacing the living room, wrestling with my conscience. The room was dimly lit by a single lamp, and shadows danced across the walls as I contemplated the implications of my impending actions. I recalled a conversation with a friend from years ago, someone who had spoken about the complex intersections of love, duty, and sacrifice. Sometimes, he had said, we are asked to make choices that defy conventional morality, choices that force us to confront our own imperfections. His words now echoed in my mind, urging me to look beyond the immediate shock and consider the possibility of redemption through selfless acts. In the quiet moments of introspection, I began to see that Lena's request was not an indictment of our marriage, but rather a desperate bid for healing, both for her and for Mara. She believed that by creating a child, a living symbol of hope and continuity, she could mend the broken pieces of their past. And perhaps in some twisted way, she trusted me to bridge that gap, even if it meant stepping into a role that was as ethically ambiguous as it was emotionally charged. The confrontation, I knew that I had to speak to Mara, to understand her perspective, and to see beyond the veil of familial duty. One rainy afternoon, I arranged to meet her at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town, a neutral ground where we could talk openly. The cafe was nearly empty, the soft patter of rain on the windows providing a somber soundtrack to our conversation. Mara, I began hesitantly as I sat across from her. Lena told me about your struggles. I want to understand what you need. Her eyes were an ocean of conflicting emotions, hope, fear, and a deep-seated sadness that had clearly been nurtured over the years. I've always dreamed of being a mother, she confessed softly, her voice trembling as she folded her hands together. But every time I tried, something went wrong. I lost hope, and with it, a part of myself. She paused, as if weighing the consequences of her next words. I know this is unorthodox, she continued, but Lena believes, and I believe, that you might be the answer. I know it sounds crazy, but if there's a chance, any chance at all, that I could hold my own child, then I'm willing to try. Her plea was raw and unfiltered, a mixture of desperation and quiet courage. I felt my heart clench. How could I reconcile this request with the vows I had made to Lena? Yet, in her eyes, I saw not a seduction, but a cry for help, a cry that resonated with the silent parts of my soul. In that moment, the lines between right and wrong blurred, leaving behind only the undeniable truth that some wounds run so deep that only unconventional acts can begin to heal them. Mara, I said, my voice breaking with emotion, this isn't something I can decide lightly. It's not just about you or me. It's about trust, about the promises I made to Lena. I need to understand how you see this working, how it can possibly mend the hurt instead of creating new fractures. She reached across the table, her hand trembling as it brushed against mine. I'm not asking for a relationship with you, she explained. I'm asking for a miracle, a chance to break this endless cycle of loss and longing. If you do this for me, I promise you, I won't interfere with your life. I only want to be a mother, to nurture a part of me that has always been denied. Her words left me speechless. It was as if I were caught in the eye of a storm, a surreal moment where logic and emotion collided violently. I spent the next several days in a haze, trying to disentangle the intricate web of loyalty, desire, and duty that now define my existence. The decision. The decision wasn't made in a single, definitive moment. Rather, it unfolded slowly, each day marked by painful introspection, countless sleepless nights, and a constant battle between the man I thought I was and the man I feared I might become. Lena, for her part, was a study in quiet resolve. Every time I hesitated, she gently prodded me with a look, a whispered reminder of the shared pain between her and Mara. One evening, as autumn rain lashed our windows and the wind carried away the remnants of summer's warmth, Lena and I sat together in our living room. The tension was palpable, each heartbeat a silent drum of impending change. "I've thought about it," I admitted at last, the words heavy with resignation. "I can't pretend that I'm not affected by this. Every part of me is torn between love and duty, between fidelity and the desire to help." Lena's eyes softened, and for a moment, the raw intensity of the situation gave way to a shared understanding. "I know it's not easy," she said quietly, "but I believe in our strength. I believe that if we can do this, we can heal not only Mara's pain, but some of the unspoken wounds between us. I need you to be the one to give her hope." It was in that vulnerable admission that the weight of my responsibility settled fully upon me. I realized that, in many ways, this was a test, not only of my love for Lena, but of my capacity for compassion and sacrifice. And so, with a heart heavy with both dread and a peculiar sense of resolve, I agreed. The night of no return. The decision led us down a path from which there was no turning back. The days that followed were a blend of quiet preparation and turbulent emotions. Every conversation, every glance exchanged between Lena and Mara was laden with anticipation and unspoken fears. I found myself meticulously rehearsing scenarios in my mind, each one more surreal than the last. Finally, on a night when the sky was draped in a shroud of moonlight, Mara and I found ourselves alone in a modest hotel room. A neutral space where the usual confines of family dynamics could be momentarily suspended. I stood in the doorway, my heart pounding in my chest as I hesitated before stepping inside. The room was dim, with soft music playing in the background, a haunting melody that mirrored the complexity of my emotions. "Mara," I called softly, stepping forward. My voice seemed to betray my uncertainty. She turned to me, her expression a mix of resolve and sorrow. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice quivering. "But more than anything, I'm hopeful. I need this, more than I've ever needed anything before." Her confession ignited a torrent of emotions inside me. In that room, in that fragile moment between duty and desire, I felt as if I were holding the very future of our intertwined lives in my hands. The act that followed was not one of passion or lust, but of a solemn, almost ritualistic attempt to mend broken dreams. As our bodies came together, I felt an overwhelming sense of duty, each movement a silent prayer for redemption. Yet, even as the physical act unfolded, my mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. I was painfully aware of the transgression I was committing against the sacred vows of marriage, a betrayal that seemed impossible to reconcile. And yet, the intimacy shared in that dimly lit room felt strangely purifying, as if it were the only way to transform the raw pain of the past into something that might someday become hope. The aftermath. In the days and weeks that followed, the quiet routine of our lives was irrevocably altered. Mara's pregnancy, confirmed in the sterile environment of a doctor's office, cast a long shadow over our family. Lena's reaction was a complex tapestry of relief, joy, and an undercurrent of unspoken sorrow. Our home, once a sanctuary of mutual understanding, now pulsed with an eerie tension. Every interaction became a delicate dance of words left unsaid. Lena would sometimes catch my eye, a fleeting look of gratitude mixed with the weight of guilt. Mara, too, was transformed. Her once timid smile now held a hint of defiant hope. Yet behind her eyes lay a vulnerability that made every gesture seem tentative. One evening, as we gathered for dinner, a tense, awkward ritual that felt more like a fragile ceasefire than a family meal, Lena spoke up. "I know this isn't how we imagined our lives," she began, her tone both apologetic and resolute. "But I also believe that love isn't defined by perfection. It's defined by our ability to forgive, to trust, even when everything seems broken." I nodded, swallowing the bitter taste of remorse and longing. "I understand." I murmured, though inside, my thoughts were a storm of regret and uncertainty. I was haunted by the memory of that night in the hotel, the feeling of crossing an irreversible line. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the sorrow in Mara's gaze and the desperate hope in Lena's expression. The ensuing days were marked by small conflicts and unexpected moments of vulnerability. Lena began questioning my every action, her eyes darting suspiciously whenever I was alone with Mara. Mara, for her part, struggled with a quiet, unspoken resentment, a feeling that perhaps I had become a stand-in for something more profound than mere procreation. And I, caught in the crossfire, felt the crushing weight of responsibility and betrayal. The cracks began to show. It wasn't long before the strain manifested in our daily interactions. A seemingly insignificant remark from Lena, a half jest about new beginnings, would trigger a cascade of anxious silence. I would catch Mara lingering on the threshold of a conversation, her eyes searching mine for reassurance. The unspoken question hung in the air. Had we all crossed a line that could never be uncrossed? One afternoon, as autumn deepened and the chill in the air grew more pronounced, Lena confronted me in our study, a room that had once been our refuge for honest conversation. "I feel like there's a distance between us now," she said softly, her eyes downcast, "like a secret that's eating away at everything we built." I sighed, feeling the familiar ache of guilt and loss. "I know," I admitted. "I keep thinking about that night, about what we did, and I can't help but wonder if I've doomed us all." Her eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "Doomed us?" she repeated bitterly. "Or is it that you're starting to wonder if you really wanted this? If you ever really wanted us?" Her words struck me like a physical blow. In that moment, I realized that the true betrayal wasn't just against the sanctity of our marriage. It was a betrayal of our own expectations, our hopes for a future unmarred by regret. I was trapped in a web of my own making, a web spun from the conflicting threads of love, duty, and unfulfilled desire. Mara, too, sensed the growing tension. One rainy evening, as I returned home late from a long, sleepless night of self-reproach, I found her sitting alone on the porch. The soft glow of a single lamp illuminated her features, revealing the deep lines of worry etched into her face. "Do you regret it?" she asked suddenly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the rain. "Do you ever regret helping me?" I paused, the weight of her question sinking in. "Every day," I confessed in a whisper. "Every moment since that night has been a battle between what I believe is right and what I fear I have done wrong." Her eyes shimmered with tears, and for a long while, neither of us spoke. In that silent exchange, the enormity of our shared burden was laid bare, a burden that threatened to crush us all beneath the weight of unspoken truths. The unraveling. Time, as it always does, marched on relentlessly. The months that followed were marked by quiet escalations, a misplaced comment, a lingering touch, a secret glance. Lena's initial relief at the news of Mara's pregnancy gradually gave way to a pervasive anxiety, a fear that the very foundation of our family was crumbling under the weight of our choices. One evening, during a rare moment of raw honesty, Lena and I sat together in our dim living room, the soft light casting long shadows on the walls. "I can't help but feel like I'm losing you," she said, her voice trembling with pent-up emotion. "This whole situation, it's tearing us apart." I reached out, taking her hand in mine. "Lena, I love you, but sometimes love is complicated, and it doesn't always come in neat packages. I never intended for any of this to happen. I only wanted to help Mara, and somehow, in doing so, help us heal." She pulled her hand away, a pained look in her eyes. "But at what cost? I feel betrayed by you, by us, by everything I believed in." That night, as I lay in bed beside a restless Lena, I found myself drifting into a state of conflicted introspection. I recalled the promises of youth, the idealistic dreams we had shared, and the reality that now, all those promises seemed shattered. The man I once knew, a man of certainty and unwavering faith in our future, had been replaced by someone riddled with doubts, haunted by guilt and regret. I began to wonder if this was, in fact, the true test of our marriage. A trial by fire that would either forge an unbreakable bond or leave nothing but smoldering ruins in its wake. The climax of emotions. As Mara's due date approached, the tension reached a fever pitch. Our interactions became a series of delicate negotiations between duty and desire, trust and betrayal. One particularly stormy night, after a bitter argument with Lena, I found myself alone with Mara in the hospital waiting room. The sterile fluorescent lights and the distant hum of machines only amplified the gravity of our situation. Mara turned to me, her eyes searching mine with an intensity that left me breathless. "I know you're hurting," she whispered, "and I'm sorry for the pain I've caused. But I also know that I needed this, needed you, to give me a chance at something I've never had." Her words, laced with vulnerability and a desperate hope, broke through the dam of my emotional defenses. In that moment, I realized that every decision I had made, no matter how morally ambiguous, had been driven by a deep-seated desire to salvage something beautiful from the wreckage of our lives. I had betrayed the ideals of fidelity and loyalty, but perhaps in doing so, I was also forced to confront the complexities of love and responsibility. "I never wanted to hurt you," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. "I thought I was doing the right thing, that I was helping someone who needed me more than I needed anyone. But now I'm not so sure." Tears welled in Mara's eyes as she reached out, her hand trembling against mine. "I don't expect you to have all the answers," she said softly. "All I know is that this isn't just about me or a child. It's about healing, about finding a way to mend the broken parts of our hearts." In that charged moment, the lines between betrayal and redemption blurred. I realized that our lives had become a series of choices, each fraught with both beauty and despair, and that the only way forward was to accept the inherent contradictions of our nature. A bitter lesson in trust and redemption. In the weeks following the delivery of Mara's baby, a fragile, beautiful symbol of both hope and tragedy, our lives were irrevocably changed. Lena and I retreated into a silence filled with unspoken resentments. Our once vibrant conversations reduced to cautious whispers and fleeting glances. Mara, now a mother, wore a mask of quiet resilience, her eyes betraying the cost of her dream. I spent long hours reflecting on everything that had transpired, on the cascading consequences of a decision that had seemed so clear in the depths of my own internal chaos. I questioned the nature of love and loyalty, the price of trust, and the terrible beauty of our flawed humanity. In my solitude, I began to write down my thoughts, attempting to make sense of the complex tapestry of emotions that now define my every waking moment. One rainy afternoon, as I sat by the window with my journal, I wrote, "Love is not a simple equation. It is a labyrinth of choices, mistakes, and moments of grace. Today, I stand at a crossroads, a man burdened with regret, yet yearning for a semblance of redemption. Perhaps, in the end, it is not our mistakes that define us, but our willingness to learn from them and to rebuild what has been broken." That reflection became my quiet manifesto, a reminder that even in the midst of betrayal and heartache, there lay the potential for growth and healing. I knew that the path to redemption would not be easy, that the scars of our past would linger like ghosts in every corner of our home. Yet I also believed that if we could confront our demons together, if we could rebuild trust from the shattered remains of our former selves, then perhaps we could find a way to transform our pain into something meaningful. In time, Lena and I began to talk again, hesitantly at first, then with growing sincerity. We acknowledged the mistakes we had made, the deep-seated wounds that had festered in silence. Our conversations were raw and unpolished, yet they carried the promise of forgiveness and the slow, painful process of healing. The uncertain road ahead. Today, as I watch Mara cradle her newborn in her arms, a living embodiment of both hope and the burdens we carry, I am reminded daily of the fragility of trust and the complexity of love. Our family remains a tapestry of intertwined destinies, marked by betrayal, longing, and the ceaseless struggle to reconcile the ideals of loyalty with the messy realities of life. There are moments, too, when I catch a glimpse of Lena's eyes and see the lingering sorrow of unhealed wounds. In those moments, I wonder if our marriage can ever truly recover from the choices we made. But then I recall the quiet strength in her voice when she whispered that love, in its most genuine form, is not about perfection, but about our ability to endure, to forgive, and to find beauty in the broken. I have learned that sometimes the most profound acts of love require us to confront our own moral ambiguities, to navigate a labyrinth where every step is fraught with both risk and possibility. The journey I embarked upon, one that began with a shocking request and led me through the darkest corridors of betrayal, has forever altered my understanding of responsibility and compassion. As I stand on the precipice of an uncertain future, I hold on to the hope that redemption is possible, that even the most fractured hearts can find solace in forgiveness. I have come to accept that trust, once shattered, can be painstakingly rebuilt. Each piece, each moment of vulnerability, forming the foundation of a love that is both imperfect and resilient. And so, with a heart still heavy with regret, yet buoyed by a newfound resolve, I continue to navigate the tangled web of relationships and emotions that define our lives. I am a man forever changed by a single, unimaginable request, a man who has learned that love is not a matter of right or wrong, but of the relentless pursuit of hope, even when every path seems steeped in sorrow. In the quiet aftermath of our storm, as the world around us settles into an uneasy calm, I find solace in the belief that through our shared pain, there lies the possibility of rebirth. Perhaps one day, Lena, Mara, and I will be able to look back on these tumultuous days not as the end of our world, but as the crucible that forged a new understanding of what it truly means to love, to trust, and to be human. Reflections on love, loyalty, and redemption. Now, When I recount this chapter of my life, I do so not with pride, but with a cautious hope, a hope that our scars might one day serve as reminders not of our failings, but of our capacity to forgive and to grow. The journey has been excruciating, and the wounds still ache with the intensity of remembered betrayal. Yet in the midst of that pain, I have discovered that every act of love, no matter how fraught with ambiguity, carries within it the seed of redemption. I have learned that trust, once broken, does not vanish entirely. It lingers in the small gestures of reconciliation, a gentle touch, a quiet conversation, a shared silence that speaks volumes of our mutual longing to heal. And while the road ahead remains uncertain, I now understand that the true measure of our humanity lies not in our ability to avoid mistakes, but in our willingness to confront them head-on and to find the strength to rebuild what was once lost. For anyone who has ever faced the crushing weight of betrayal or the heart-wrenching pangs of guilt, know that redemption is never far behind. It may come in the form of a fragile smile, a tentative embrace, or the quiet words exchanged in the stillness of night. And sometimes, the most profound act of love is the courage to admit our faults, to stand vulnerable before those we hold dear, and to take the first tentative steps toward forgiveness. In the end, my story is not one of unmitigated tragedy, but a testament to the complexity of human nature, a reminder that love, in all its messy, imperfect glory, is worth fighting for, even when every path seems laden with betrayal and heartache. As I continue to navigate the intricate dance of emotions that now define my life, I carry with me the belief that every ending is also a beginning. The choices we make, no matter how flawed, can become the stepping stones toward a future where trust is rebuilt, where love is redefined, and where even the most shattered hearts may one day find solace in forgiveness. Looking back on that fateful period, I realize that the most painful lessons are often the ones that force us to confront our own vulnerability. Lena's plea, Mara's desperate hope, and the heavy burden of my own conscience have all led me to a deeper understanding of what it means to be truly human. In our shared journey through betrayal and redemption, I have learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is not in maintaining an unblemished facade, but in daring to be imperfect, in daring to trust again. Now, as I pen these reflections, I do so with a quiet conviction that no matter how treacherous the road may be, the possibility of healing remains ever present. And though the scars of our past may never fully fade, they serve as a constant reminder that love, complex, flawed, and infinitely resilient, is the one force capable of carrying us through even our darkest nights.